Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. Well, my guest today is a vocal educator, a musician, and she's been doing that for a number of years now. And she's from Ontario. Time to meet Brenda Carroll. Welcome to the show, Brenda.
Hi, nice to meet everybody.
Now, you're in Toronto, are you?
I am in Toronto, yes. I'm in the east end of Toronto.
Okay. So now, what started first? Like, become a musician, like a performing musician, and then started vocal teaching, or how did that all work out?
I studied since I was very young, and I was very fortunate to have a great education in Ontario in music, in the elementary situation.
Okay.
And then in was directed in at a very young age, maybe 11 or 12 years old, to pursue some type of music. At that time, I played clarinet and saxophone, so something entirely different, but I always sang. And it seems that a lot of school programs will offer instrumental music, but not vocal.
Mhm.
So it wasn't until high school that vocal ensemble was introduced to me in education in a high school setting. So I switched. So I switched from instrumental band music to the vocal ensemble. So that's how it started. But I think I've always sang since I was a child, and then had the opportunity to study quite a bit when I was very young in piano and other types of tutelage and education in music.
Right. I'm just thinking about, when I went to school, which a long time ago, there was no musical instruments, there's none of that, and I think of it's thank goodness that they eventually brought that in for the children, right?
It's so amazing. And even today, some education has less and less music
Yeah.
available to kids, especially instrumental music, which I think is probably what triggers kids to learn music
Okay.
and to want to learn, right? So,
Yeah.
but like most band circumstances in schools, they pick your instrument, the teacher picks your instrument. So you don't often get to play what you want to play,
Oh,
So
yeah.
I didn't want to play saxophone, tenor saxophone. I wanted to play flute.
Okay.
But fortunately, the teacher knew that eventually I'd want to play a flute. So the fingering is the same for
Okay.
the saxophone and the flute. So it's very nice that they're almost the same.
Yeah, right. It's kind of interesting, when you talk about what happens in the schools. Like I used to be part of the Optimist Club, and they used to give bursaries or whatever to the academic students. And I suggested to them, well, what about the other students? Like musicians are, just as clever in that genre as
Regard. Yep.
somebody is in the maths and the science and whatever, so they fortunately they picked that up, at least here in Chilliwack. So it's like, why not acknowledge these young people?
Yeah.
That
All kids. Yeah.
right?
All kids matter.
Yeah, for sure. So now, right now, okay, so you've been doing this since what, 19?
In Toronto, I've been teaching since 1994.
That's a long time.
Yeah. That's a very long time. I do it quietly in the background. I think a lot of singers that I teach, many are professionals or semi-professional or young, and some of them are on television or, maybe actors that want to, be able to be a triple threat, dance, sing. So I get students through that route,
Mhm.
and just playing and singing, people hear you and go, I want to do that. I want to be able to do what you do.
Right, yeah. So now you're a performer yourself. You get up on stage and go to different venues.
I do. Before COVID, I was predominantly just a singer on stage. I didn't play instruments other than percussion.
Okay.
And then during COVID, I've always played guitar, but I was never very good. I was never good. So what I did was I started playing a lot more,
Hmm.
and every single day, especially during COVID, because there was really, a lot of time on our hands.
Right.
And I'm left-handed, but I only have access at that time to right-handed guitars. So I just spent all my time learning it upside down, the fretboard.
That's really interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, that's one way to train your brain. to do something entirely different than you're used to,
Right.
right?
I always find it very fascinating how somebody can learn instrument, like the piano or the flute or the saxophone, whatever, and eventually learn other instruments as well, right?
Well, I think that you become curious, and guitar is it's very accessible.
Mhm.
So
Mm.
anyone can pick up a fairly inexpensive instrument, or ukulele. That's another good one that vocalists use. It's always good to have an instrument as a singer, because then you can accompany yourself. You don't have to rely on other musicians. It's very nice to rely on other musicians because that's their expertise.
Mhm.
But sometimes if you're a songwriter, you just want to get a song out, or you just want it simply played and sang.
Right.
And sometimes that's so much more powerful than, being amazing on both. I think it's hard to be amazing on guitar and sing. I think I give kudos to those singers that are able to do that with such ease. Yeah.
Right. Are you a solo performer?
Currently, yeah, kind of. I started writing a lot of music during COVID, and playing guitar and singing it, and subsequently went into a studio during COVID. But the studio had separated the singing, or the performer, from the engineer.
Oh, okay.
So a local musician, Tim Bovaconti, there's a little name for him. He works as a guitarist with the Guess Who. He used to work with the Guess Who. Now he works predominantly with Burton Cummings. He's his rhythm guitarist and singer on stage, backup singer.
Very good.
And he has a cute little garage studio in East York here in Toronto. And he had a little outhouse kind of holding his bikes in another side building. So he separated them, and what kept us together was two, I guess, just wiring, headphones and a mic, you know.
Yeah.
And I was in a small shed that you couldn't put your arms across. That's how small it was, right? In the middle of the winters, in the middle of the COVID. And we were able to do the whole album, just the two of us. Him predominantly doing most of the instruments. I played a little bit of guitar on a number of the songs. And I have yet to release it because, there's a lot of timing issues, and getting to go in and edit it now is difficult because Burton Cummings is now touring. So Tim's a busy guy.
Yeah, I
But
get.
yeah, so now I go up on solo stages, and I haven't booked a lot because of COVID, I think.
Mhm.
And I don't think it's something that's really gone away.
Yeah.
So, and I do believe that I don't want another lockdown. So I'll perform outside or in venues that are, there are less people.
Right. Yeah.
And just, I wear a mask and be respectful, and, hopefully we can let this all go,
It would be nice.
the new norm.
Yeah, for sure. Now, were your parents musicians?
My natural father played guitar and sang. He fancied himself to be a fine guitarist. He's lovely. My uncles all played. On my mom's side, she loved to sing. She loved to sing in French and English, but not professionally, just for fun.
Right. Yeah. Now, if you have siblings, do they also perform?
No, ironically, I do have one older sister who used to sing, and I think she sings even better than I do. Like, her voice is, really magical, but I don't know if she ever pursued it.
Okay.
So,
That's kind of interesting, isn't it? Now, some
yeah.
people want, to have that need. Some of the people have that need to be out there, like on stage or whatever it is. And others even maybe to have that talent, but don't want have that same desire. It's all very curious, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, music, I think, is more a part of my life as opposed to, you know, it's just, it's not a lifestyle, so to speak, but it just comes naturally for me.
It is
So
who you
getting up
are.
on stage, I
Yeah.
don't really I get a little bit nervous, but not really.
Right.
And in teaching, my job is to help other singers overcome, some of their inhibitions or issues or whatever. So as I said, I work silently with singers in the sense that I don't like to name drop who I teach and that kind of thing, because to them, they're coming to me much like
Sure.
therapy or
Yeah.
help or assistance. And they may have issues and they don't want other people to know that they have those vocal issues or might have those vocal issues. Right?
Sounds fair. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if you were blabbing all the time, I don't mean blabbing. Well, you know, I mean, bragging all the time about who you were,
Or the who's who.
yeah, people wouldn't, after a while, some people say, well, I'm not going to her. She's going to let the world know.
Well, yeah, and the other thing is that some of my students have gone on to higher education, academia in
Mhm.
universities and teaching music programs. So that's my job, is to make sure that there's more teachers out there that can do great things with music and with young people and with anybody, any age, because now we can go to university at any age. You know, you can be 80 and go back and start again.
That's true. Yeah. Are you still teaching in the schools as well?
No, I don't teach. I've never taught in the
Oh, sorry.
schools.
Okay.
I've never taught in the schools. I have an interesting job. I have two jobs in my life. I've always worked in the school board, but again, in the background, I work as a caretaker, which is
Mhm.
funny. I recorded in 1998 with Steve Wallace on bass. And Steve's a magical, amazing player here in Canada. And I said to him, how do I do this in music? Like, how do I make a living? How do I eat? How do I feed my family? And his suggestion was great. He said, you know, Brenda, you need to find a job that pays you to practice.
Ah.
And I said, what, you don't think I'm good enough? Like, what's that mean? And he said, no, that's not what I mean. He said, what I mean is you want to find a position or a job that allows you to have that level of less stress or a level of an ability to have time
Right.
in your day, in
Yeah.
your shift. And in caretaking, I can literally sweep a hallway and sing the whole night and no one can hear me or bother me or so it ended up being quite good, but I moved up subsequently in my work with the board and ended up as a head caretaker now. So
Oh, very good.
so there's a little less singing in that job, but
Right.
and it's usually to the boilers, you know, to turn them on.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Have you ever had somebody who come to you who maybe doesn't have any musical singing background, whatever, that you're just been amazed by?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I do sponsorships in the neighborhood. So some of our neighborhoods in Toronto have, you know, really high immigration coming into Canada, and they don't have the resources, or the education system is not able to support them musically. So I do end up with students that are kind of phenomenas in music, but are not, don't maybe have the same access to education as we do.
Right.
So what I do in those circumstances is I match the lesson. So I try to find musicians to donate guitars or instruments to those students, and so that they can learn to accompany themselves and get more out of the education of music
Right.
in their own regard, and help others too.
Yeah.
But also to match their lesson financially. So they'll pay half the lesson and I'll pay half the lesson. And I'll go for supports and in the community. So people will make donations to support singers or musicians in general to
Right.
study.
You know,
Yeah.
I interview a lot of musicians, you know, as well as other people, but one of the things that I've learned, and I'm sure you'll agree, is music, whatever form it takes, is a universal language, right?
Absolutely.
It touches everybody in some way, somehow.
And particularly English music.
Oh, is that right? Yeah.
Well, yeah, because every country tries to sing Frank Sinatra.
Okay.
There are some singers in the world that you know, Nat King Cole, everyone tries to sing like that. Doesn't matter what nationality or what language you speak. And by that I mean they're singing in American English, you know.
Yeah.
You know, and they probably don't even know what they're saying or singing, you know, much like I do in Portuguese, you know.
So what style of music do you sing?
I sing everything, but I recorded professionally in jazz,
Oh, okay.
in contemporary and modern jazz.
Mhm.
And then the work that I'm doing now, that I'm writing and playing on guitar, is mostly folk jazz sort of oriented, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess similar to Joni Mitchell, that type of style, very intimate. But of course, her proficiency as a musician is just, above the charts, particularly on guitar and every other instrument she ever chose to play. So like a lot of singers in Canada, I want to express myself through songwriting. And I think that the time of COVID allowed a lot of singers and musicians and writers, any type of artist, to have that time.
Yes.
And a lot of fodder to work with,
Yeah.
because you have so much to write about now as opposed to before,
Yeah. I was going to
so
ask,
that's,
yeah, what inspires you?
for me, I think social issues.
Mhm.
So I liked the idiom of folk music because it allows you to write songs of protest, or songs of social information.
Yes.
But I find that jazz allowed me to open up my ears to a lot more harmonically, and to have a lot more, much more capability in jazz. It's not so limited.
Okay.
So
Yeah. No, I believe you have a website.
I do actually. I have under two monikers, brendacarroll.com and brendacarrollmusic.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll make sure that's included under your name when I
Well, thank you.
render this.
Thank you
Yeah,
very
for
much.
sure. Yeah, I think we've touched everything. Sorry. Do you have any performances coming up within your area?
I'm just planning to go into studio with Tim to finish editing and mastering all of the recordings I did during COVID.
Right.
And I think there's probably about 2 albums worth
Oh,
now.
nice.
Yeah, so it's very, very nice, and they're very different.
Yeah.
And then once I release that, then I'll book public performance for the release of that.
Right.
And but usually I just get up on open stages, or with friends. There used to be one at the Black Swan here in Toronto. There's a club here, and unfortunately Seb, he passed away, so that's not there. But I think that someone else will pick up the moniker, and there's always open stages, Free Times Cafe, and
Right. Yeah.
and I haven't made it out to BC yet. My daughter's out studying at the University of Victoria.
Oh,
And she's
okay.
living in Victoria, BC. So I hope to make it out there in the spring and perhaps perform there, and see your beautiful end of Canada.
Yeah, that'd be nice. Yeah, because I lived in Burlington and Newmarket, Ontario. So I've been
Yeah, they're not as beautiful.
well, originally I was from New Brunswick. So I've
Oh,
been
were
across
you?
kind of
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we're going to end it here though, but I just want to talk to the audience that remind them, you've been listening to Brenda Carroll. I'm going to post her websites for you and check it out. And if you're in her area, I'm sure, you'll find out if she's doing one of these open mic performances, whatever you call it in your area. Go and check it out, because musicians love to perform not only for themselves but for the audience as well, and it just gives you a different vibe, I guess you can say. I don't know how to explain it when you're on stage, and you have an audience, because I don't.
Oh yeah, well, I always teach my singers and any musician that I work with, if there's only 2 people in the audience, you play as if there's 2,000.
Exactly. Yeah.
Give your same energy, and
Yeah.
you don't know who that person is in the audience. You just don't know, right?
That's where we're going to end it. So everybody, thank you so much for watching the show. I hope you continue to do so. Take care, everyone, and peace out.
Thank you so much. Nice to meet you.